The young woman had only one meal left, and she knew that if she gave it away, she would have nothing to eat that night. She stood outside a small bakery, clutching a paper bag with the last piece of chicken, some rice, and a bottle of water she had bought with the few coins remaining in her purse. Her stomach was already aching from hunger. She had not eaten properly in 2 days. Yet when she saw the old woman sitting alone on a cold park bench, trembling beneath a thin, worn shawl, something inside her made a choice that would change her life forever. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness still matters, that people deserve second chances, and that one small act can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose heart might need a little kindness today. Her name was Amara, a 26-year-old woman who had learned far too early that life did not always reward good people quickly. She lived in a tiny rented room above an old mechanic's shop on the edge of the city. The room had a cracked window, a mattress on the floor, and a small table where she kept the photograph of her late mother. Amara worked wherever she could find work. Some days she cleaned offices, some days she washed dishes at restaurants, and occasionally she helped elderly people with groceries. But for the past 3 weeks, everything had gone wrong. The hotel where she worked had closed unexpectedly, leaving her without a job. Her savings disappeared paying rent and buying medicine for her younger brother, who lived in another city. She had applied everywhere, but every employer seemed to want experience, connections, or someone younger and cheaper. That evening, Amara had walked nearly 5 miles because she could not afford the bus. Rain clouds were gathering above the city, and her shoes were beginning to hurt. She had stopped at a small bakery and used almost the last of her money to buy a simple meal. It was supposed to be her dinner and breakfast the next morning. She held the bag tightly as she walked through the park, thinking about how she would survive another day. Then she saw the old woman. The woman was sitting completely alone on a bench beneath a large tree. Her clothes were worn and dirty, her hands shook from the cold, and her eyes were fixed on the bakery bag in Amara's hands. She quickly looked away, embarrassed that she had been caught staring. Amara continued walking, but after several steps, she stopped. Something about the woman's face reminded her of her mother during the final months of her life, when pride had prevented her from asking anyone for help. Amara slowly walked back. She sat beside the woman and asked if she was hungry. The old woman gave a faint smile and nodded. She explained that she had not eaten since the previous morning. Amara looked down at the bag. Her stomach tightened. She imagined the warm food inside. She imagined waking up hungry the next morning. For several seconds, she fought with herself. Then she opened the bag and placed the entire meal into the old woman's hands. The woman stared at her in disbelief. Amara simply smiled and told her that she needed it more. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. She tried to break the food in half and return some of it, but Amara gently refused. She gave the woman the bottle of water too, then stood up before her own tears could fall. That night, Amara walked home through the rain with an empty stomach and an empty purse. She climbed the narrow stairs to her room, changed into dry clothes, and sat beside her mother's photograph. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to cry. She wondered whether kindness was foolish when you were struggling yourself. She wondered whether the old woman would even remember her by morning. She fell asleep hungry. At exactly 7 the next morning, someone knocked on her door. Amara opened it and found 2 professionally dressed strangers standing outside. One of them introduced himself as Daniel Brooks, the personal assistant to a wealthy businessman named Jonathan Reed. Amara immediately became nervous and wondered if she had somehow gotten into trouble. Instead, Daniel asked whether she was Amara Williams, the woman who had given her last meal to an elderly woman in the park the previous evening. Amara froze. Daniel explained that the elderly woman was named Eleanor Reed, Jonathan Reed's 78-year-old mother. Eleanor had disappeared from her assisted living facility the previous afternoon after becoming upset and walking away. Her family had searched everywhere for her. When they finally found her in the park that night, she kept talking about a young woman who had given her the last food she had. Amara could hardly believe it. But the biggest surprise was still coming. Eleanor had been carrying an old envelope inside her coat. Before leaving the park, she had written Amara's name on it after learning who she was. Inside was a note asking her son to find the young woman and help her, not out of pity, but because Eleanor believed someone willing to give away her last meal while starving herself deserved an opportunity. Daniel handed Amara the envelope. Inside was a handwritten message explaining that Jonathan Reed owned several businesses in the city, including a growing catering company that desperately needed someone with organizational skills. Eleanor had learned that Amara had previously worked in hospitality and had completed a business management course before financial problems forced her to stop studying. Jonathan wanted to meet her. Amara was convinced there had to be some mistake. She had not given the old woman food expecting money, a job, or recognition. She had simply seen someone hungry and helped. But when she arrived at Jonathan's office later that morning, he did not treat her like a charity case. He asked about her life, her work, her skills, and her dreams. Amara spoke honestly about everything she had lost. Jonathan listened carefully. Then he offered her a position managing operations at one of his smaller catering locations. It was not a gift. It was an opportunity. The salary was more than Amara had ever earned before, but what mattered most was that Jonathan believed she could succeed. Eleanor later visited the office, and when she saw Amara, she hugged her tightly. She told her that the meal had filled her stomach for one evening, but Amara's kindness had restored something much more important, her faith in people. Months passed, and Amara worked harder than anyone expected. She arrived early, stayed late, and treated every employee with the same respect she had shown Eleanor. Eventually, the small catering location became one of the company's most successful branches. Amara was promoted, moved into a comfortable apartment, and was finally able to help her brother finish his education. But she never forgot that rainy evening. 1 year later, Amara returned to the same park carrying several bags of warm meals. She found an elderly man sitting on the same bench where Eleanor had once been. He looked hungry and exhausted. Amara sat beside him and offered him a meal. She no longer gave because she expected something in return. She gave because she remembered what it felt like to have almost nothing, and still choose kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories of hope, compassion, and second chances. And before we end, I want you to do one special thing. Comment, kindness always comes back, if you believe that even the smallest act of goodness can change someone's life. Amara once thought she was giving away her last meal. In reality, she was planting a seed in a moment when she believed her own life had nothing left to give. She never knew that the woman sitting on that bench would open a door she could not see. And perhaps that is the most beautiful thing about kindness, it does not always return in the way we expect. Sometimes it comes back as an opportunity. Sometimes as a friendship. Sometimes as hope. And sometimes, when you think you are saving someone else, you discover that your kindness was quietly saving you too.